Many of you know who Sarah is. Dr. Matyko, did I say that correctly?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Dr. Matyko joined SRG in 2017 as the Corporate Director of Life Enrichment, where she provides the development, oversight, and direction to achieve proactive outcomes via a population health management program, aligning internal resources and employing wellness optimization strategies. Prior to joining SRG, Dr. Matyko led the U.S. Navy's Population Health Program, a $25 million initiative designed to optimize popular health strategies through integration of healthcare delivery, proactive data analysis, and clinical wellness services for 400,000 beneficiaries. She received her bachelor's degree in exercise physiology from West Virginia University, where she rode on the crew team. Pretty impressive, with a minor in gerontology. Thank you. Dr. Matyko then obtained her master's and doctorate from the University of Southern California with a specialization in lifestyle redesign and behavioral science. Dr. Matyko has been an American Council on Exercise and an American College of Sports Medicine certified personal trainer since 1999. She is also a certified diabetes educator and an occupational therapist. In addition to her role with Senior Resource Group, Sarah volunteers as an advisor for the Nike Go program to help combat childhood obesity. And she was definitely a legend here at ECC back in the day. So, Sarah, why don't you take it away?
Natalie, she's still a legend.
And she is.
And her PhD is definitely in ECC's behavior and people. That's where I think that's where she got the PhD.
Nice.
Well, thank you. I have to say I haven't been on very long with you all, and it feels like an old friend that you haven't seen in a long time. You just feel like everything's normal and no time went by at all. So I'm really happy to see all of you. I'm just going to go ahead and get started. So I didn't know Natalie was going to do my big nerdy introduction. But the reason I want you to know that I'm a nerd is that everything I'm about to tell you today is evidence-based and grounded in science. And so I think that's important when you're talking about happiness and well-being because it's such a subjective topic. So my thesis was actually in PNI, which is the study, sorry, let me move this, the study of the connections between the mind and the immune system. It's really the concept that the mind and body are inseparable, and it follows that stress affects the mind's ability to resist disease. So this is not something hippy-dippy. I was recently the keynote speaker at a positivity summit that was a week long, and it was so interesting. I mean, there were all these amazing speakers there, and it was so interesting how focused people were on happiness. And I think the silver lining of COVID has really opened up our minds a bit about the importance of mental health, connection, and socialization. There we go. So an example of PNI is if you have one patient and they say that they get a terminal diagnosis, that patient says, I'm going to get my affairs in order, I'm dying. And then the second patient says, I'm going to beat this. Let's do everything we can. They have a really positive mindset. Clinical outcomes have shown that patient 2 has better clinical outcomes. So that's a really good example of PNI, of the powers of thought and how it affects your physiological health. There's a lot of studies around this. So today, my goal is not to put you to sleep. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about the science, but I am going to talk about it a little bit. Happiness is actually a really difficult thing to talk about, as I mentioned before, because it's subjective. So this presentation will be a success if it just gets you thinking about fostering happiness in your life. And I'm going to share some interesting case studies that I think you'll find relevant, along with some practical application. Happiness defined, again, it's pretty subjective. It's been long studied across multiple disciplines. So Aristotle defined happiness as an expression of the soul in considered actions. Freud said happiness is to love and to work. Schultz said happiness is a warm puppy. And a U.S. Supreme Court Justice, Potter Stewart, said, happiness is like an obscenity. We can't define it, but we know it when we see it. I think this is the one that resonates the most with me. But across psychology, pop culture, politics, happiness transcends them all. So for the purposes of today's presentation, we're going to refer to happiness as the experience of joy, contentment, or positive well-being, combined with a sense that one's life is good, meaningful, and worthwhile. And so I tend to use the term happiness and well-being pretty interchangeably. And there's a lot of physiological benefits to it, like I spoke of. But happiness and positivity, for the purposes of this presentation, are going to be used pretty interchangeably. Any questions so far? Whoops.
Yeah.
Okay, I can no longer see you guys, but are you still there?
Yep, we're still here.
Okay. So a summary of the research, being happy doesn't just make you feel good. Compared with less happy peers, happier people are more sociable and energetic. They're more charitable and cooperative. They're better liked by others, more likely to get married and stay married. They have a richer network of friends and social supports. They show more flexibility and ingenuity in their thinking, more productive in their jobs. They tend to be better leaders and negotiators and earn more money. They're more resilient in the face of hardship, have stronger immune systems, physically healthier, and live longer. So at the end of this presentation, I included citations for you in case any of you want to do a more deep dive into the evidence-based studies. But I think this summary is a pretty strong reason to work on our happiness, especially the live longer piece. So just like athletes, and we all probably have the Olympics on our mind, if you think of any professional athlete or your favorite professional athlete, they have to put in work to become the athletes that they are. And it's the same thing with happiness. You have to put in the work, but it really is the most rewarding work that you'll do because it results in happiness. So Natalie had sent out the subjective happiness scale. I just want you guys to take like 3 minutes and fill this out and put your score at the bottom. And all of you left brainers are going to perseverate on number 4. Just know that it's designed to be that way. So just answer based on your perception of the question.
And this is it's actually an attachment in the invitation itself. So if you want to access it there, you can. Man, so many familiar faces. Rob Perrette, Chris Cannon. So nice to see you guys. Paul, Hunt, and Saberwell.
Hey, Sarah, how are you?
Good. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Great to see you, Sarah.
Thanks.
How's that beautiful daughter doing?
Oh, she's good. Terrible twos. I'm gonna give you guys another minute to complete it. Okay, I'm going to have you put those aside and we're going to come back to them towards the end of the presentation. So I wanted to talk about a few happiness myths before we get into the practical application. So this painting, which is very expensive to buy right now, always strikes me because it says, "I can't wait to grow up and be happy." So at a very young age, we're taught that happiness is out there for us to find. And the reason that it's not out there is that it's actually inside of us. The good news is that science shows we're in control of about 40% of our own happiness. Happiness myth number 2 really lies in changing our circumstances. So this is the myth. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with Michael Ovitz from Disney. He was the former president of the Walt Disney Company. He had a 28,000 square foot mansion for he and just his wife. He had the world's largest basement, which was 13,000 square feet, a separate 4,000 square foot office, 2,400 square foot covered tennis pavilion, and this was in Beverly Hills, I believe, a garage big enough to accommodate 13 cars, a yoga room, and an art gallery. So Disney does a lot of leadership training and management, as I'm sure you're very aware. And so they actually had him take the happiness, subjective happiness score. His happiness score was the same as a middle school teacher that lives in a pleasant but tiny studio apartment. Money and things don't make us happier. Right now, materialism is at the highest point it's ever been in our country. Hedonic adaptation is a really well-studied phenomena that many of you have probably already heard of. In 1940, a third of homes did not have running water, no indoor toilets or bathtubs or showers. More than half did not have central heating. People that were 25 or older only stood a 40% chance of completing 8th grade, a 25% chance of graduating high school, and a 5% chance of finishing college. So now, if we fast forward to 2021, the typical house has 2 or more baths, twice the size, central heating, average 2 rooms per person. We have microwaves, dishwashers, color TVs, iPods, personal computers, but in 1940, their happiness scores were higher. So it's really interesting. I work with seniors right now, and older generations have lived through the full spectrum of materialism, and they have some really unique insights to share about the way that it has transpired over the years. I wanted to give you a real life example of hedonic adaptation. So this is my husband and my daughter. She's 2.5 years old now. They are the loves of my life. And when I was about 6 months pregnant, my husband, Eric, decided to buy this car. He wanted this for a really long time. He's obsessed with cool sports cars. He grew up pretty poor, so it's always been a goal of his. So he bought it when, again, I was 6 months pregnant. It has no back seat, so definitely not practical at all for a pregnant person and a kid on the way. When he bought it, the dealer told him that it will kill you just as fast as it will make you smile. He named it Ruby. All of his friends would come over to our house and like hand wash it. It was just this big affair. And I'm pretty sure if I was pregnant and like fell near Ruby at the time, he would check on Ruby before me. It had like special towels and photo shoots, all that. So fast forward to 2020, and now it's 2021, and this car has lost its battery 3 times because he has not driven it. And that's really hedonic adaptation. We're all on this hedonic treadmill, and this is very well studied. We go back to wanting more no matter what it is. So for example, my husband wanted this car. He worked really hard to get it. He got it, he obtained it. He loved it at first, he adapted, and then it became meh, and then he desired more. And this is America summed up on the hedonic treadmill. So a lot of times people think, you know, money, if I have more things, happiness, or more things, more cars, a larger salary, it's going to make me happy. And we know from very conclusive science that materialism does not make us happy. So looking back at some of the ads, the media's role, the marketing in this, I just included a few ads. This is from Macy's, and it implies that clothes make you happy. This is an ad from Dodge, and I think it's implying that cars make you happy and apparently help you marry younger women. This is an ad from the 1970s, and just look at all the stuff on this camping trip. So materialism has been compounding over time for quite a while. This is an ad from also from the 1970s, I think, and it suggests that TV adds so much value to family happiness. I don't think it does. This is from Lord & Taylor, and it implies that a new dress will actually make your friends jealous. So materialism is pretty pervasive in our culture and has been for a long time. And this one always kills me. These are real lines to get the iPhone 4, waiting for the iPhone 4 to be released, like people asleep on the streets to be first in line to get this phone. So the reality of hedonic adaptation is, again, very well studied, but we think that stuff will make us happy, and it doesn't. So really, what does? Happiness myth number 3 is you either have it or you don't. And so decades of science actually validate what determines happiness is 50% set point, which I'll talk about, 40% intentional activity, and 10% of circumstances. So our happiness set points is a baseline for happiness in which we are bound to return to even after major setbacks or triumphs. It's genetically determined, and a lot of the research about happiness is really interesting. It comes from identical and fraternal twins that show each of us is born with a particular happiness set point, and it originates from our biological mother, father, or both. So the way I like to think about it, and you all are probably familiar with this too, is that we all have a weight set point. Some people are blessed with being skinny, and it's easy for them to maintain that weight, while others have to work very hard to keep the weight at a desirable level. But we always kind of revert back to our set point. Like we've been dieting for a long time, we might get really skinny, then we start eating normal again, and we go back to our set point of weight. The same thing is for happiness. It's genetic, and all of us have a set point of happiness. Some of us might have a more unhappy set point, and some of us might have a very happy set point. I think on the happiness continuum, Paul Sabarwal might be like over here somewhere in the very, very, very happy, which is a great thing. So some interesting studies. In the picture on the right, a Duchenne smile is when it expresses true enjoyment. So the eye, when you're actually really smiling, you'll notice that you get wrinkles in the corner of your eyes. And they did studies, and those that were happier as college freshmen in photos had higher salaries 16 years later when they were in their mid-30s without any initial wealth advantage. And then in college yearbook photos, people who had Duchenne smiles were more likely to be married by age 27 and more likely to have satisfying marriages at age 52. So that set point of happiness does influence the trajectory of our life, unless we're working really hard at improving that set point. So circumstances are 10%. So this is kind of a counterintuitive finding. Only about 10% of the variance in our happiness levels is explained by differences in life circumstances or situations. So whether you're rich or poor, beautiful or plain, healthy or unhealthy, married or divorced, only 10%. One of the most interesting studies I think on this is, the Midwest is pretty cold, and Southern California has constant sunshine. So they looked at college students over time in both places, and the weather actually had negligible effect on happiness levels, which I would think would have a pretty big effect, but it didn't. Americans earning $10 million annually report the same levels of personal happiness as blue-collar workers they employ. So again, materialism and money do not equate to happiness. So if we can accept that our life circumstances are not the key to happiness, we'll be greatly empowered to pursue happiness for ourselves. A lot of people think, when I get that thing, I'll be happy. The house, the car, weight loss, salary. And we know from science it's simply not true. So the key to happiness actually lies in not changing our genetic makeup, not in changing our circumstances. The key to happiness really lies in our behavior and our daily intentional activities. Just like those Olympic athletes that have to work really hard to get to that level of ability, we have to do the same thing with our happiness. It allows that 40% to focus on our happiness, and it's within our control through what we do in our daily lives and how we think. So that's what we're going to get into with the practical application. I did want to share, this is from Erik Erikson, who is the godfather of adult development. And he's done a ton of studies on this. And so the first half of your life, you're less happy than you are the second half of your life. So a lot of people theorize that it's because in the first half of your life, you spend it collecting things like buying a house and buying material possessions and, climbing the ladder and making more money. And then the second half of your life, you start getting rid of things and you focus on what's more meaningful. And I can tell you, I work with seniors right now, and they are so darn happy. When they move into our communities, they get rid of stuff, tons of stuff, and they focus on family and what's truly important, like doing activities and hobbies that they enjoy every day. And their set point of happiness is extremely high. It's really interesting. Any questions before I get into the practical application?
Hi, Sarah. This is Manjeev.
Hi, Manjeev.
Any correlation between the set point for weight and happiness? Are fatter people happier?
No, that there is not a correlation there that I've seen in the research.
I mean, that's I think something we should look at, because in general, people feel that fatter people tend to be happier.
Is that why you're so happy, Manjeev?
I'm very happy. But now I don't have to blame anybody or myself. I just say my set point is higher than Paul's for weight, so I don't have to work out as much.
I have to say, Manjeev, you really influenced my research into all of this, because I remember you and I were at Max's, I think, which is next to the Burlingame office, for lunch. And you were mentoring me, and I was having a hard time feeling guilty about something. And you said, to be happy, you have to learn to control your thoughts. So then I started reading, I think you recommended Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, or I can't remember a book, but I started reading it and really changed the trajectory of my life by being in control of my own thoughts. So thank you for that.
Welcome.
All right,
Sarah,
I'll get back to it.
he tells all of us that, but you're one of the few people that actually could do it. Bravo.
I don't know. It's a work in progress. My default is not to do that. So happiness activity number 1 is probably not surprising to any of you. It's expressing gratitude. The definition of gratitude is focusing on the present moment and appreciating your life as it is today and what has made it so. I'm a pretty type A person, and being this kind of mindfulness, I really have to push my energy towards. But it's so well researched that you can't deny the value it adds to our lives. People, the 8 ways gratitude boosts happiness is it promotes the savoring of positive life experiences, bolsters self-worth and self-esteem, helps cope with stress and trauma, encourages moral behavior, builds social bonds, inhibits comparisons with others, it's incompatible with negative emotions, and it helps us thwart hedonic adaptation. I think one of the greatest discoveries is that as a human being, we can alter our life by altering our attitudes, and gratitude is really the catalyst for that. So how to practice gratitude. And again, we only have time for 10 of these tips. There's a lot more. Keeping a gratitude journal, keeping the strategy fresh. So a lot of the research actually shows that you should vary your gratitude practices because if you count your blessings in the same way every day, you can become bored with it and not extract meaning from it. So some other ways you might want to vary, your gratitude journal would be to write a journal some weeks, talk to a friend about what you're grateful for another week, express gratitude via art or photography, if you're a big Instagrammer. Make sure your expression of gratitude is a meaningful practice for your unique lifestyle and what resonates with you. And then expressing gratitude directly to another is another great way to practice gratitude. Does anyone have any gratitude practices that really work for you that you want to share?
Hi, Sarah.
Hi.
This is Katrina. I do have one. I usually pray. I pray every day. That's one. And then another one is to always compliment other people.
Those are both great.
Yeah.
Yep. I'm sure the people that you're complimenting are grateful for those compliments.
Yeah,
Hey,
before
we are grateful for Katrina. She brings all that positive, happy energy to every person around her.
It's awesome.
Thank you, Paul.
If you are not someone that has the discipline to do some of the things that we just talked about, Headspace app is a great gratitude resource because it gives you a little daily push or reminder to help you set up a gratitude practice, as well as Jour. It's another one. I actually use Jour for my gratitude, and it's very helpful. Happiness activity number 2 is to cultivate optimism. So it's defined as not about celebrating the present and the past, but anticipating a bright future is how optimism is defined. So cultivating optimism, there's little optimism, like my flight will arrive on time, which predisposes you to behave in a constructive, healthy way in specific situations. It predisposes you to optimistic thinking. And then there's big optimism, which is we are on the threshold of a glorious age, which elicits an overall feeling of vigor and makes you feel resilient, strong, and energetic. I personally have a lot of big optimism, and everyone at my current workplace calls me a Pollyanna, but I think it's a good thing. So optimistic thinking boosts happiness in several ways. Optimists are confident that their future is bright. It motivates them and leads them to take initiative. It prompts us to engage in active and effective coping. They're more resilient when faced with adversity, promotes positive moods, vitality, and high morale, less likely to show signs of depression and anxiety. And optimists are better liked and have higher self-regard and a sense of mastery. So I know in the workplace, there's been a lot of studies done to show that optimism actually expands your circle of influence as well. People are willing, if they like you and you're a positive person, to help you more than they are with someone that you ask, hey, how's your day going? And they're like, well, it's going. No one usually jumps to have more of that. So in the workplace, it's very beneficial. So ways to practice optimism is your best possible self's diary. So what this means is visualizing your future in which everything turns out the way that you want it to. Identify barrier thoughts. So just like quitting smoking, you can put $1 in a jar every time you have a negative barrier thought, or snap your wrist with a rubber band. And then rehearsing optimistic thoughts helps put your optimistic muscle into practice. Happiness activity number 3 is avoiding overthinking and social comparison. So I really like the quote, don't believe everything that you think, because our brains are wired for something called stinking thinking. So for example, this morning I did a webinar for another organization, and I got 99% positive comments and 1 negative one. And that's the only thing I can think about. That's what stinking thinking is. And our brains are wired for that stinking thinking. And then also comparison is the thief of joy. I read a Psychology Today article about how the younger generation, kids right now, are bringing their Snapchat filters to plastic surgeons depressed that they don't look like the filter and asking how they can look like that. It's terrible. How to avoid overthinking and social comparison. So obviously distract, act to solve problems, be proactive rather than just perseverating and sitting on this problem. Dodge overthinking triggers. So if it creates angst for you every time you call Sally, then don't call Sally. Take in the big picture. There's some interesting studies about social comparison. They did studies where they had people sit in a waiting room with their phone in their pocket. And those people, like a doctor's office waiting room, and if they had their phone in their pocket, they smiled 45% less than people who did not have their phone anywhere near them. And a lot of this is phones have become the new smoking. And just like we had to stop smoking in public, many scientists and researchers think that in the future, because phones light up our brains so much and nothing can compare to our brain's pleasure centers to what this little computer that we have instant access does to our brains. So there's a lot of smart people who think that eventually it'll become the norm when you go to a friend's house that there'll be specialized furniture that you all put your phones in and it gets locked up until you leave. That'll become the norm because it's affecting our health and the way that we function so seriously. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens over time. A great overthinking resource is Tim Ferriss's book, Tools of Titans. He studied extreme overthinking and has some great practical application within this book. Happiness activity number 4 is practicing acts of kindness. So helping others can satisfy a basic human need for connecting with others, winning you smiles, thankfulness, and valued friendships. Ways to practice kindness, there's so many, but timing is everything. Again, too little or too much, you won't obtain benefit of happiness. Variety is the spice of life. So same as gratitude, vary how you practice it so that you don't get bored. And then create that ripple effect of kindness, which we're all familiar with. Happiness activity number 5 is nurturing social relationships. And what I like about these 10 happiness activities, 1 through 10 that we're going to go through today, is that anyone can do them. You can start doing them tomorrow. They're applicable for all of us. So relationships constitute the single most important factor responsible for the survival of Homo sapiens. If you think about it, social groups hunted together back in the caveman days, they shared food, they fought together, and now we know that cultivating social relationships is just as important to our health as not smoking. And I think that's another silver lining of COVID. It really shined a light on the need as humans to come together and be social. So some strategies for investing in relationships. Oh, another thing about COVID, I've read a lot of interesting studies about is normally when there's a crisis, like Katrina, for example, it doesn't matter your socioeconomic status, your ethnicity, or whatever differences you have with people. When there's a crisis, human beings come out of the woodwork to band together and help people in those times of crisis. COVID was so counterintuitive to that because we were forced to be apart and this huge crisis is going on, and it's really the first catastrophe in history in which we couldn't come together and support each other through this hard time. So strategies for investing in relationships are to make time, communicate, express admiration and appreciation and affection, be supportive and loyal, and hug. So there's one study that found 49 hugs per week improved actual clinical health outcomes. And I think I hug my daughter that much in a day, so I'm in good shape there. Happiness activity number 6 is to win the morning. So this is the most important thing I'll tell you today from our practical application, is that your morning behavior sets your trajectory for the course of your entire day. Your actions are really leveraged and they have a large impact on how the rest of your day goes. So James Clear has this time as leverage outcome. You want to win the morning. If you do anything from this presentation, this is the thing to do. Making a bad choice in the morning is a cascade of how your day plays out. And this is really well researched. For me personally, I know if I don't work out in the morning, my whole day just goes down the tubes in comparison to the days that I do work out. Happiness activity number 7 is believe. It's all about the powers of thinking. So this is cognitive behavioral therapy 101. So we have our belief system, and then an event happens. Someone yells at you, there's a car accident, a stressful day. You start thinking, I can't handle this. Comfort food or a cigarette will make me feel better. Then you get a feeling, I need a food or cigarette to cope. You have a reaction, which can often be self-destructive, like overeating or eating junk food, smoking a cigarette. And this applies to any behavior. It could be overthinking as your reaction. And then there's a consequence. So the self-destructive coping mechanism equals unhappiness. So what usually happens is your belief system validates what you think. I can't change my habits. And you reject thoughts against your belief system, like I can quit smoking or eating junk food. And so you have to change your overall belief system to be successful with behavior change. When it comes to any behavior, I use examples of cigarettes and foods, but it can be happiness or any other behavior you're looking to change. You can't just change your thinking. So you've got to believe I can lose weight, I can quit smoking, I can be happy for it to actually work for you. Any questions about that? I oversimplified a very complex model, so hopefully it makes sense. So we did this a lot with the company that I work with now, is aiming to reframe, taking things and giving yourself cueing to reframe your thinking. So cue yourself. If you need little reminders to prevent that stinking thinking or that overthinking that you know that is inherent or habitual for you, put Post-it notes places, put reminders up. I'm not sure if I talked about, so yeah, so there's actually was this great story. It's a whole other presentation, but there's this hospital in Detroit that was getting terrible patient satisfaction reviews. And so all they did was they put little positive quotes on the tables in the dining room and throughout the hospital, like, today is going to be a great day. You look beautiful, stuff like that. That's the only thing they did. They didn't change anything else. It improved perceived patient satisfaction by 35%. And right now, I just flew to San Diego. The San Diego airport has those positive quotes everywhere. And it's because of this phenomenon called confabulation with consumers, getting this like a lie that becomes a truth about businesses. And so you'll see now a lot of businesses, because psychologists and behavioral economists are advising them, are putting these positive quotes in places because it actually improves perceived satisfaction of the organization that they're interacting with. Really interesting stuff. Happiness activity number 8 is to adopt the U-turn mantra. I'm sure everyone's really familiar with a GPS satellite system. So if you're driving down the road and you make a mistake or turn into the wrong lane, your GPS doesn't scold you and tell you to drive off of a cliff. And you need to give yourself that same U-turn mentality. You're gonna make mistakes, you're gonna make wrong turns, you're gonna eat the whole cake or the whole pizza or get stuck in a cycle of negative thinking. But what you need to do, instead of throwing in the towel and going on a 4-week binge or, negative thinking, is at the next available moment, make an authorized U-turn and get right back on track. Because it's inevitable that we're going to get off track. We're all human and it happens. We just have to remember this U-turn mantra and cue ourselves to get back on the right road. Happiness activity number 9 is self-care. Meditation is a whole other presentation. It's so beneficial for you, but make sure that you're participating in self-care because it really does add to your happiness levels. And I know as busy as you all are at ECC, it probably usually takes a back seat, but I also know Paul and Manjeev would want you focusing on self-care because you are better to your family and ECC when you are doing that. And then final happiness activity is keystone habits. So keystone habits are like the keystone in this arch right here. It's a habit that you'll want to identify that helps you hold your life together. So your homework is going to be to identify 2 or 3 happiness habits that have a ripple effect into other areas of your life. So for me, one of my keystone habits is exercising daily. And another one that I do 3 times a week for an hour is to be in nature without a phone. Like those keystone habits keep me really sane and grounded no matter what's going on in my life. And so your homework is to implement 2 to 3 keystone habits. So pick 2 to 3 habits you can start working on immediately. Figure out your implementation intentions. Make them SMART goals. So when are you going to do it? For how long? Something as simple as meditate as part of your morning ritual. Go for a walk after dinner. Physical therapy every week before lunch. Figure out what your keystone habits are. And then in 1 month, I want you to retake that subjective happiness scale and email me and tell me how it's changed. I think that you will be pleasantly surprised. The important thing to remember is that no matter what your score is, you can become happier. And this book is a great keystone habit resource if you want to dig more into it. And then finally, to close, and I'm a little early, so we'll have lots of time for questions. This is also a whole other presentation, but there's some new budding and really interesting, amazing research coming out about the second brain, which is your gut, and how 70% of your serotonin and dopamine, which are your happiness hormones, are actually produced in your gut, which again, they're calling the second brain. So a balanced gut microbiome actually increases your serotonin production, and serotonin is your happy hormone. And so everyone should be taking a probiotic because that helps balance your gut microbiome. The things that throw your gut microbiome off and reduce healthy gut flora are processed foods, medications, especially antibiotics. So I did a ton of research, and this is the one that I purchased. The website's on here for you. I have no relationship with them at all, but I just always get asked which one I use. So this is the one that I used. And it's expensive, but extremely effective. Within 2 weeks of using it, I lost 7 pounds. My stomach, I'm a high stress person, was always bloated, completely flat now, more energy. It's amazing when you're traveling a lot because it really keeps everything in check. It's just fantastic. So every human needs a prebiotic and probiotic. So in summary, research patterns of the happiest people is to devote a great amount of time to friends and family. They nurture and enjoy those relationships. They're comfortable expressing gratitude for all they have. First, to lend a helping hand. They practice optimism when imagining their futures. They savor life's pleasures and try to live in the present moment. They make exercise a weekly and even daily habit. They're committed to lifelong goals and ambitions, and resilience. They have the same stressors and tragedies and crisis that we do. Their secret weapon is that resilience, poise, and strength. That's it. Any questions?
Does your husband want to sell the car?
No, he will never sell that thing, much to my disdain. He says our daughter will take it to college, to her prom.
Oh no, don't let that happen.
I know. She's never going to leave the house. I'm keeping her in a bubble forever.
That was great reminder, Sarah. Thank you.
Sarah, what was happiness initiative number 6? I forget. I lost it between 5 and 7. I got busy looking for a GIF of a hugging bear.
With the morning, Paul.
It's win the morning. Yep.
Oh yeah, that's right.
That's the most important one.
Got it.
Not to Paul and me, we don't have any mornings.
Yep.
Tiffany, you had your hand up. Did you want to say something or ask a question?
Yeah, so some of you have actually reached out to me because Cigna had sent you an email. If you're currently doing physical therapy now, Cigna has actually came out with a program called Recovery One, and it is an online physical therapy program. It's included in ECC's health benefits. No added cost to you or your dependents who are over age 18. So this won't apply for some of you on the call who are on HMSA or Cigna International, but I'll get this out to those enrolled in Cigna Domestic, because at least if you want to sign up for this, it's all online and you don't have to go anywhere.
Awesome.
There's a couple of questions coming through in the chat, Sarah. This is from Kate. Could you give the name of the Keystone Habits book again?
Atomic Habits by James Clear. And Natalie, feel free to send this presentation out too.
Yes. Okay, great.
If I can put in a plug for that book, Don Klaus turned me onto that about 1.5 years ago. And I got it. I've signed up for James Clear's newsletter. He does a weekly newsletter that's very cool. It's not newsletter, it's like 3 quotes, very, very short. And we all watched one of his YouTube videos as a family. And we started keeping our fruits out on the counter rather than in the fridge. And it completely changed our eating habits. People walk in and grab a cookie. It's because a cookie or a brownie or something would be sitting on the counter and the fruit was in the fridge. But instead of just leaving the fruit out, we walk by, grab an apple instead. And we put the cookies and all that stuff in the back of the pantry.
Yeah, it's called choice architecture. So there's been a lot of places in which, like football players, they'll just label the healthy foods with like a green sticker, and you know the middle road foods with a yellow sticker, and the red ones is no go, and that improved their eating habits, just having those little cues there.
But Sarah, you would say just don't even bring it into the house from the grocery store. Then you don't have to label it.
Exactly. If you're going to eat unhealthy, just go out and get it so it's not living in your home. Come on, Jeev.
I got lots of people in my home. If I start doing that, I'll get kicked out of the house.
If you haven't been kicked out of the house yet, it's not going to happen.
So, Sarah, one other thing, I know you're talking about these probiotics and prebiotics. All the stuff that I've been reading from, fairly reputable places say that there really is, unless you've just taken antibiotics or you have some other special problem with your gut, that these are pretty much useless in healthy eating and eating things such as fermented vegetables or eating yogurt is more than enough for most healthy people.
Yeah, that's a really good point. So things that are fermented like kefir and kombucha are definitely a better choice than relying on a probiotic. But I think with the lifestyles that we have, and I travel a lot, I know you all do, sometimes it's really difficult to eat healthy on the road. So it just gives me that extra peace of mind and backup that it's helping to keep my gut flora healthy.
So Sarah, what are your thoughts on fish oil and mental health, especially the omega-3 fatty acids?
Yeah, there's a lot of really great research on that. And it's the same thing that Manjeev was just mentioning. Better to get it from your food than the supplement, because the supplement is often like an insurance plan. We don't know if your body's actually going to use it, but it can't hurt because it's going to excrete what it doesn't use unless you have some sort of, predisposed chronic condition.
Okay.
Sarah, I've got a question about any resources that you would recommend for resilience in dealing with just COVID in general, books or things, because I know a lot of people, we've been in this probably for 18 months, probably more, in the next few months. What do you recommend?
Yeah, I mean, I know you all have Sonic Boom, so the Academy has some great mental health resources, especially for your people out in the field, because they can just pull it up on their phone and watch from their phone. Sonic Boom does a really great job with that. I'll have to think about some books and send you an email, Natalie. I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Gotcha. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
Sarah, one thing I did want to mention is to just reach out to somebody. I know that a lot of people have been suffering with depression and anxiety during this pandemic. I minister, so I talk to lots of people, and people really feel alone. They really feel alone, and they don't have somebody to talk to. But don't hesitate to just call somebody. I know we're such private people in this type of industry that we work in, and even in America, period. But just talk to somebody. Don't feel like you're alone. That you're not alone. You're not alone, and somebody cares. Somebody cares, and just reach out to somebody, because it really gets hard, working and moving around like we do. You don't feel like we have community, but it's so important to understand that we all have the same things going on. Believe it or not, we may be different in our cultures or different in our background, but mostly we are striving towards the same things. We're striving towards the same things, and just reach out, because you're not alone. Somebody has been through worse, or somebody has been through something that you've been through, so that you have somebody to talk to.
Absolutely. And virtual connection is better than no connection at all. Okay, well, thanks for having me. It was so wonderful seeing you all.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for doing this for us. We really, really appreciate it.
My pleasure.
It's been too long. And Sarah, it's true. You have made such a lasting impact on everybody in this organization, who, even the people that have come and since that didn't know you, they hear about you all the time.
Well, thank you. And likewise, because you all were my first job out of college and just set me on such a great trajectory and mentored me and invested in my leadership. And I use it every single day. And I'm not kidding about that. So thank you.
Yeah, I think we owe Rich Josh a big debt for finding something.
Hey, Sarah, what are we doing with that happiness score that we calculated? Did I miss that?
With the what? I can't understand your accent.
Oh, you guys have the accent. I'm the only one that speaks normal around here. But, no, the happiness score that we calculated early on in the presentation?
Yep. So you're going to implement some keystone habits over the next month, 2 or 3 keystone habits, and then you're going to take it again and see how your score has changed.
Okay.
Thanks for paying attention towards the end of the presentation, Paul.
So Paul, your 3 keystone habits are be sure to play the guitar every day, go for a run every day, and hug your grandson every day.
And I call my parents every day.
It's a great one.
So I had just one, this is Keith Anderson. I have one last question. Which one of your score do you compare it to? I mean, if you got well, I'm not going to tell you what I got, but what's a good score and what's a bad score?
An
improved
like your total score? Is it? Sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you. Are you asking what score you compare it to when you take it the second time?
No. So the first time you get your happiness score and it was that number.
Yep.
So what do you compare that to? Like, if you get a 5, that means you're 5 out of 7, or?
Yes. And then when you take it again to see how it's changed, you want it to be, well, you see what happens, but once you implement the keystone habits, it should increase.
Just tell Keith he's very happy. Whatever his score is, he's very happy.
Sarah, the way that quiz is set up, though, if you get to be extremely happy, you don't get to 7, because the 4th question is a counter question, right? So there you would be a 1. Right?
I forgot how hard it is to work with a bunch of engineers, and you're detail granular oriented mindsets. I'll send Natalie a link for the peer reviewed information that you can all take a look at about the limitations of the subjective happiness scale.
We would like that.
The one thing I don't miss about ECC, how many grams are in that bowl of green beans?
But I don't think so. I mean, I didn't take number 4 as counter. I think that
But once you average it.
Because Paul, if you score a 7 on that, that means you're really unhappy.
Yeah.
It varies by your set point of happiness. Now I'm gonna have to send you guys the whole thing. I should have listened to Glenn yesterday when he had issue with it and not put it in there.
Yeah, I actually emailed her about it yesterday, and I said people are going to have a problem with this.
Yeah, that's because I looked at it, and if you get
just for the math,
a number for 4, then you're
Oh,
bad. So,
Sarah, I had no problem with it. I understood exactly what it was supposed to do.
And Sarah, you seem very happy, by the way.
On the last question.
On the last question, because I'm not depressed and I feel happy, I went with a 6.
Huh? Is that the opposite? Did I read the question wrong?
you didn't read the question right.
That's
Well,
exactly how I interpret
but I
it.
read it the way that I
That's
wanted.
the way a happy person read it. Though.
That's how I read it too. So it factors in the limitation for your set point of happiness.
Right.
But I thought
Right.
it said, here's what it says. Although you're not
Oh, no.
depressed,
All right.
they are never as happy as it might be. So does that describe you? You're not as happy as you might be?
Well, yes. I mean, I could be a 7 if I was just perfectly happy, but I just handicap myself a little bit because it can't be possible that I'm as happy as I really think I am.
Okay, so all of you that are not blue, please drop off this call. Craig, stay on the call. Virginia, stay on the call. We're going to wrestle this to the ground today.
Manjeet, I get exactly what you're saying. I had the same issues, so.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, Sarah. Thank you.
Sarah's like, I've had enough of this.
I'll be sending